All right, welcome back, everybody. And this is second session of Data Platform Geeks Virtual Symposium. And this time I have Sandeep Pani with me. So Sandeep has over 2 decades of experience with data analytics and AI. And the great thing about Sandeep is he has variety of experiences in projects. So the breadth is great. And that is why we have got Sandeep. And I should be very thankful to Sandeep that he pitched in at the very last moment, because Jana's session was supposed to happen in this time slot. But I am very fond of this topic, which he has delivered once earlier as part of Data Platform Geeks webinar, but I'm sure he's up with updated content. The session is Art of Feature Engineering for Machine Learning. And friends, this is Sandeep Pani for you. Sandeep, over to you. Thank you so very much for joining the virtual symposium today.
Hey, thanks. Thank you, Amit. And I don't know across the world who have joined. So good evening, good morning, good afternoon, if somewhere else around the world. So let me start to share my screen.
Yes, Sandeep. Now you will get sharing option. Just check.
Okay. Yeah. Can you guys see now my screen?
Absolutely.
Okay. So welcome you everyone. And as already Amit has given my little bit of introduction. So I just want to tell something more about myself. So I work as a principal engineer for NextGen Healthcare. And I am also the regional mentor and UGT for Data Platform Geeks, and having 14 years of experience, more than 14 years. And I'm a AI ML enthusiast, and I speak in various conferences, some like SQL Bits, and this year's also I spoken to that conference, and also the DPS Data Platform Summit across various years. My specialization is designing data pipelines, machine learning, query tuning, performance optimization, and I'm passionate about data. If you want to talk to me about data, it doesn't matter which technology or about what area I love to talk about. I blog it in the below website mentioned here, and my Twitter handle is this. So with that, let's move to the today's agenda. So as you know, that today's topic is art of feature engineering. You guys must be aware of this word. So how many of you have already worked on that? I'm not sure, but I believe you guys, when you joined, you would have either Googled about it and search about it, or somebody might have already experienced onto this. But I'm not sure about the audience, so I wanted to set a base about it. First we'll discuss about what exactly feature engineering means, and then we look into the whole overall data lifecycle, data science lifecycle, and the workflow, and where this feature engineering fits into, and what are the different feature types and characteristics we have, then problem, and what are the problem happens, like why we do the feature engineering. So two things you need to know: that what exactly features, what different problem happens with that, and how you address it, and what different technique we apply to that. So all these things we'll discuss. So techniques we'll be using various tools. The important is the tools are limited, but the way you handle is unlimited, like how you're dealing with that. So it's mostly important on how you know about the tools, as well as how you understand the domain. So without domain, of course, it is difficult to do this part. There is no silver bullet for it to do, okay, you know the tool and apply the tool, but still we'll try to know that what is the base behind it, how you start thinking about it, and then we'll see that how we can achieve through some demo. So the feature engineering, if you look into the whole data science project, we have the data. We have lots of data. Many companies, they wanted to start the ML project or data science project, and they say, hey, I have so much of data. I already have a data warehouse system. I have so many raw data. I have your data lake. Can you do something for me? Well, we will do it, but what you need it? That is the first question. Like other application or other business requirement, we usually check what exactly they need. And they usually say that, okay, we need to do this. The first thing is we need to check it. Though they have used data, can we able to, or am I able to answer to those questions, the data what they have provided, right? So first we go and look into that, and that is called as part of the data exploratory analysis, or of the EDA we do. During the EDA exploratory analytics, we look into a lot of the stuff which today we are going to do that. But the most important thing is what the data explains to you is more important. Like how will you know that what this data is talking about? Um it's like if the data is not explaining you the right thing, you won't be able to understand what is this data about. Let me come up with an example to you. Suppose you visit a doctor and you say, hey, doctor, I'm not well. So you just explain, you said that's the data you have, that you said I'm not well, and there is no other data with you. Then the doctor will start doing the exploratory analytics or start to dig into yourself. Okay, why are you not well, and which part or how you feel about it. So you may say that no, I'm getting headaches, so I'm not getting headache, and that's why I came to you. Okay, so why you got headache? So the maybe you can say any reason. Okay, yesterday I got some stress because of my office work, or I have some kind of problem, maybe stomachache or something, and because of that you could not get a good sleep. So now think about it. The moment you say something and how the doctor is start digging to yourself, start digging on you to understand what exactly the problem, to find out the root. And the more better you explain the problem, the more better the doctor understand. In this case, there is nobody. So we have the data. So how can I get the data in a right form so that I can explain the problem to your to the system? So once you explain the problem to the system can understand well, and maybe it can find out the pattern behind it. So that is the major reason behind this explanation, how you explain it. So with that, the better you explain, the better feature engineering you are doing, and the better the system will understand. The better system will understand, the better model will be designed. So all depends on how you do it. I have seen many people start talking about deep learning, neural network, GAN model, So, but the whole world is not with that. So the whole machine learning data science project is not like that. A business problem can be solved through a simple naive Bayes algorithm. So some algorithms are exist, the tree model exists, a lot of KNN exists, but you can solve the problem. So there are lots of simple algorithms through which you can solve a problem. So the idea is always when we start a data science project or the ML project, so the idea is to make the model simpler. And one of the area how you can make a model simpler is that how much of time you spend on defining right feature so that you can get your desired output. So that's how I have highlighted here explanation. So feature engineering explains your problem well. So we get raw data from different sources. We do the cleaning of the data. After once you clean the data, then we do our feature engineering, and then you do the model building. And this is not just one way feature. It's just not a one way. It's just it's an iterative method. So build the model, you don't find something. So I will talk more in detail about that, how the life cycle works. But that's what the art of explaining data is, nothing but the art of doing feature engineering. So do not, with that also you should be cautious about when you explain or when you're feeding the data, you should not make the too much of feature engineering with that the model will be more overfitted. So overfitted is something where your model may perform well in your training data, and but when it comes to test data, it won't perform well. Why? The reason is what we do in ML. So we feed the data and system try to understand the pattern. He try to learn everything what is mentioned in the data. So when you start learning everything mentioned in the data, it means you add some noise to that. So something happens, very uncommon patterns also you learn, which is not exactly happen every time. So in machine learning, we learn the past and we try to predict the future. That's what happens. So overfitting happens if you do more, if you try to understand something, more, you may be biased with that. So bias and overfitting, all those topics are not part of this one, but you remember when you do overfitting, it means one of the area you need to look at how your feature engineering is done. So there are lots of life cycles when it comes to data science. We have, so this is by Microsoft. So CRISP-TM is also one more data science life cycle which we used to use during data mining projects, but it is almost kind of same. And I prefer to show you the Microsoft because this is one of the updated life cycle design by Microsoft. So what happens? So as I said, we first try to understand the business. Once you understand the business, we look at, okay, what exactly wanted to do, and then you look around the whole organization, that where this data resides or where this data exists or where this data is getting generated. Once we come to know, okay, these are the data from various sources, various applications, various departments, where once this data getting generated, we try to start looking into how can we do the acquisition of the data. So to first gather the data, so that takes a lot of time because the lots of factors are involved into that. Some system might not have a data lake or data warehouse. So some data is present in the form of text files. Somewhere it is in mainframe, somewhere in the database like that, somewhere it's something in the cloud. So the organization have data they are capturing from various sources. So we need to find out a way to acquire the data. Once the data acquisition happens, the first thing is that we need to have my base data ready. So base data means when I collect it, it is not in the form of doing feature engineering also. So the first thing what we do is just we define the base data, and that base data is we handed over to the modeling team or data science team. Until till the data acquisition happening, most of the cases here till that the data engineers works on to find out different thing. If you look at the data, they design the data pipelines, they do the wrangling of the data, cleaning of the data, and then they hand over to the modeling team or the real model data science team. So when it goes to the modeling team, the first thing they do is they start doing the feature engineering. And there, this is the phase. If you look at the modeling, this is the first stage in our whole modeling project. So to define a model, first I do what? I look into the data, and then start looking into what are the different kind of data I have. Then what are the different problem I have? What I need to solve in this case. If I'm solving it, whether it is solving my problem or not. As I said, first we go with the initial approach, try to refine the data. We try to convert the data into various ways based on the data pattern, based on the data type, and based on what kind of algorithm I'm going to use. So nowadays there are a lot of auto feature engineering are coming up, but still I believe those won't address all the issues, and sometimes you cannot rely on this because of it gives some, you cannot explain it why it has been done. It's same case with the machine learning model also happens. If you can't explain to the business why it is done, you will not be the whatever the model is, the business will not accept it. So the feature engineering techniques we will learn now. And now I want to explain you here that I wanted to explain here that where this feature engineering fits in the modeling technique. Once you do this, then we go to model training. We feed the data to the model, and then we try to evaluate the model, that how it is performing once the model is designed or built. So apart from that, one more thing is important, which I'm not covering in this my session, but it is very much crucial, that when we do the feature engineering technique, in one of the phase of data science model is we divide our data, that we don't know how to predict how the future will look like. So what we do, we keep some set of data and try to mimic that as a future data. So, and we remove the outcome of it. So if I'm doing a supervising model, so I try to mimic that way, right? So we keep some part of the data. Usually we keep it, the standard is 70-30%, but we usually keep based on how much of data we have. So let's keep aside 30%, and the 70% we do the feature engineering or some of the thing. But here the critical part is, if I am doing feature engineering on the whole data, what will happen? If I'm doing part, what will happen? And that is one of the topic which I'm going to talk in the DPS 2020, my session. If you are already registered, we'll come to know about what is data leakage. I'm going to talk about on this in detail about it. So, but I'm not talking in this session today. With that, if you look at the whole workflow, looks like as simple, like if suppose you have a database, I'm talking about any kind of data source. You ingestion happens through different technologies, like based on the sources, and then you feed this data to the feature engineering team or the data science team. Then the feature engineering will try to extract the data features, and then define the feature or whatever the engineering technique we do this. Then we feed the data to model engine. It build the model, and then we check, evaluate how this model is performing. If it is not performing well, we may come back again to the data source. Maybe some data we are not collecting, maybe some data is missing, or maybe we have we have not done proper what you say feature engineering, or maybe during the ETL process we would have transformed something which exactly losing some information. The loss of information cannot happen at any point of time during this data from the raw data to the feature engineering stage. With that, I just wanted to show you like how much of in a data science project, how much of time we as a data guy put in various stage of the data science project. Mostly, as I said, the cleansing and organization of data takes 60%, and collecting the data set 90% of the data engineering does. But if you look at the cleansing and organizing data, so the organizing data where it covers your feature engineering part as well. So that is the most chunk of the time we spend in data science project. And if altogether, if you look at mining data for patterns, that is also we do during feature engineering, look into the patterns. And sometimes we have imbalanced data. That is also one of the problem in the features that so how you create our synthetic data. So those all things happens during this cycle, and the overall major chunk of time goes in this area. The model building and defining define a model and tune the model and make it accurate. It's a very it is not much of work compared to the whole project, because you know that how to do the hyperparameter tuning, and you know some like how to define for every model what is the accuracy, what kind of parameters you use to find out that how my model is performing. So performance metrics you have defined, but for this area there is no particular way to decide that how to clean the data, how to organize the data, what kind of pattern in that. So that's why it's a very important part of your data science project. So we say feature engineering. So many people use different terminologies like feature extractions. So some features are hidden, so you need to extract it. Some features construction we do from combining the features, or then feature selection we do, because you might get 100 features, but all of the features may not be necessary to fit to a model because it is not required. Some features are useless, or maybe sometimes some features, suppose you have 100 features, all right, and you want to, if you add 100 features, your model is performing or giving accuracy of 98%. And at the same time, if I reduce it to 80 features, from 100 to 80, and your accuracy is still giving you 97% or 96%, then I need to decide whether this amount of information shall I give, or shall I compromise on the performance or the accuracy what I'm getting. This 92%, like from 97 to coming to 95 or 98 to 96, and how much of features I'm not using. So those things also need to decide based on the business. So if your business requirement is, okay, if my model is predicting more than 75% accuracy, then I'm okay with that. So in that case, it doesn't make sense. But in case of highly critical applications, like something to predict some health conditions, some financial status or something, even a small fraction of changes will cost you millions of dollars or rupees, or any currency in the form of financial loss, then you definitely take care of it. So this is also comes under feature engineering part. Then the feature importance. So we can find out in a particular model which features are more important. So if you look at, it's a very vast topic. It's just not only one way to look at. In every situation and every stage of this feature engineering, you need to really look at to the business and what you are deriving from it, how much it is giving benefit to you, Shall I use all variables or not? Then all this comes under this feature engineering. So transforming the data, if you look at in overall, I said that feature engineering comes under during the data processing part. So transforming your data in such a way that you explain the problem to the system, that's actually called as feature engineering. So now look at key things we should know if you are new to this world. Overall, if you look at whether it is an image or it is it's an image or it's a text or it is a common numeric column, everything has to convert into a numeric data. So to process internally. So internally what we do, if it's an image, it plays around with pixels, and when it plays around with pixels, so it is just a metric calculations, right? So and the derivative what we do, or any mathematical formula you apply, it has to be a number. Mathematical formula you cannot apply on other than any numeric data. So features is we need to make all our data to present in a numeric representation from the raw data. So that thing you should remember. As I said, a model is nothing but a mathematical formula at the end, and a mathematical formula can only be derived through a numeric data, right? So even though functionality might be there, you may apply text data or maybe image. Internally, it has to convert this to a numeric form. So these two things are important, and choosing the right algorithm will not give you better result. The choosing the right algorithm with the right data will give you the better result, better accuracy, and it will give you better performance. As I said, if you give better features, you may with having a simple model can give you a better result than having a complex model. So that you need to take care. So the feature directly influence your predictive models, as I discussed in the last slide. So we need to be very, very careful when you are defining our features. Not to be careful, but make sure you know the reason behind why you are selecting a particular feature, or why you are deriving a feature, or why you are constructing a new feature. The more better you have features, you have the flexibility to have a simpler model, and the simpler model is easier to understand. From the explainable perspective, nowadays people are talking about explainable AI or ML, where you can explain to your business that why this is how the system predicts. But unless you are not able to explain to the business why the system predict that way, none of the business will accept your model, even though it gives you a better accuracy, because that reliability only comes if you give them a proper explanation about your model, and that is easy to do when you are using a simple model. So simple model is a very subjective thing. I'm not trying to bias you guys to saying that feature engineering do all the model will be simple. No, it doesn't mean like that. The whole world is now going towards deep learning and GAN and all. Nobody is using certain traditional KNN or KNN or what you say tree-based models. Anyone, but the point is, the idea is that you should understand what you are feeding to your system before it predicts. So if you understand the data when it predicts, you can relate it that okay, why it is happening. So the garbage in, garbage out, the way, same thing. Better features you in, better result you will get. So if we are coming from a database background or any kind of programming background, we know all data has to be present in a particular type so that the system can capture it, and there should be allocate a particular memory to that. That's a we talk about data types, right? So here it is a data type, but we do not treat from the perspective of how much of memory it occupies internally. Here we look at features, how it behaves when it comes to the model perspective, or what is the nature of the data. That is more important than looking into the type of data, how much of memory it occupies. That's we look into that memory occupies when we calculate it, like how much of memory occupies. As far as feature engineering is concerned, we look into that what kind of data it is. Like the overly the whole features are of two types. I usually say that like numeric and categorical. And some make it data time. Date time is a different type of data because it is neither numeric or nor categorical. But some people cover that date time under the category of categorical. Nothing wrong in that. I usually treat this as a special pattern because my way of dealing with date time or any systems, everybody is dealing with date time is different. So numeric data are of two types. Like one is discrete and continuous. The discrete is like if you get any fixed number, like how many pen you have, or how many family members in your house, how many classes you attended. So all this, when you get a number, so that's a fixed number, and that's a discrete type of numerical data. And when it is a continuous data, it has a fractional number, right? The house pricing at the temperature, or the anything where you see the fractional part is coming, it is a continuous number. And why we need to categorize it? Because the first stage when of your feature engineering, we need to think, we need to check that what kind of data it is, because every data we deal in a different way. So that's how we define discrete and continuous. Whereas categorical data, label data, are nominal and ordinal. Nominal, where the order doesn't make sense, or order is not important. Example, if you see nationality, gender type, color type. Color type can be ordinal if you have specific application you are working on, like your road traffic signals. So you may give a number to that. It has which has more priority based on that. But ideally, when I say color, so suppose you are storing a favorite color of person, right? So in that case, if I say I love red color, you will say yellow color. There is no priority behind what my favorite color in your favorite color. In that sense, it's wherever you see your data doesn't make any sense from the order perspective, that's a nominal data. So that those kind of categorical data, whatever you have. The ordinal data where order matters. So order matters in your with respect to your business, or the way the data is, like rank one, or designation field if you look at, or class you look at, those where the order matters. So based on the order we decide, okay, what kind of data it is, right? So if somebody is like, we look into our presentation like level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5. So we here the order matters. So based on that we decide, okay, level 3 is this kind of information, what level it is. Level 4 is advanced level, so that gives you a different information. The order matters, the number, the way it increases or decreases, it depends. So those kind of data are called as ordinal data. And the date time we deal in a different ways. Mostly I have seen dealing with date time, you will see more challenges when you are working on time series data, where every place we use date time, or in normal application also use date time. But the way we deal with is like, we extract date part, we extract sometime time part, we extract only the month, we extract only the time. If you want to look at it, what time of a particular day the particular event is occurring, so there only the time is important. Date is, it doesn't matter for you what date it is, right? You just look into the time in a 24-hour cycle. So there, that way, you different way you handle that. So this is how the different feature types. So now when I'm saying variable, it interchangeably, it is nothing but my features. And here I'm saying variable because internally it is just a formula. And when it comes to a formula, it is a input data, and input data is nothing but my variable, which is derived from a feature. So what are the characteristics of variables? So one of the characteristics when you look into the data, one is that missing data or the lack of information. You see that in the, if you're coming from a database world, we handle null value, right, in a different ways. Like is null, then we update with a different value. Sometimes we update with a default value. We have our own way to handle the missing data. So this is one of the characteristics, that here the data is missing. So we will discuss in today's session. I will try to cover more about missing data, because I feel that's one of the common issue. Everybody can relate to that. And then we look into categorical variables. As I said, categorical data is your level data, having string instead of number. So how you deal with that? If string is there, how can I convert it into a number? Then linear model assumption. So every time we assume the models are the data, the two variables are linearly related to each other. That assumption we assume in that way, right? So that assumption sometimes works, but it is not always. The data is non-linear most of the time. I'm sorry. Uh, and then we look into the distribution. So this is one of the things we look at for every attribute. Uh, Distribution are different types: normal distribution, left skewed, right skewed, multiple Gaussian. So you look into your data, and that gives you insight about what you say your data is distributed across the whole time span, and how to address that, because that is also, we say that part of feature engineering. And why we always try to make the data normally distributed. This is one of the question to all of you guys, that why we uh, try to make all our data normally distributed in all machine learning application. What is the reason behind it? uh, uh, Try to search the answer. And if you don't know, maybe I touch base with, I will try to answer in at the end of my session, or in somewhere through our Facebook page or LinkedIn channel somewhere. Then outliers, we all know outliers exist in all our data. It is not a wrong value, maybe a wrong value. Sometimes I have seen people give the default age 99. I have seen sometimes they put default as 0. Sometimes I have seen the default date parameter is 1900. So those are my, that way I can get my your what you say the outliers. Or maybe some cases, think of if in my society, the where I stay during this my area, by chance, it's not true, but by chance, suppose Bill Gates is staying near to my neighbor, I wish, but if Bill Gates is staying, and if I'm trying to find out the average salary for this particular demographic or this area, uh, it will impact the income of Bill Gates' salary will impacts when it is finding out the average salary for everybody. So that is not wrong, but that is my disturbing the whole distribution of the particular population. So we need to take care of it. Like, even though it's a correct data, but it is it is impacting my distribution. So how we handle that? So that is also one area where we take care during feature engineering. Then the feature magnitude, scale of different feature. That is one of the obvious problem happens in every project, and we usually do in all projects. Like two different items, two different variables, or two different characteristics, both are in not same scale. So the moment it is not in same scale, you cannot compare. You remember when you're trying to find a pattern, we try to look at that how the two variables are correlated. If it is highly correlated, then we keep only one, because both are giving the same kind of information. There is no much variance involved in the data. So when I'm comparing two variables, if both are in two scales, then I cannot compare. So one of the thing what you need to do, that you need to scale both of them into the same scale, so that I can compare both of them. So that's about a feature magnitude. Uh, how age and salary are two different scales we use, right? Age has a different scale, and salary has a different scale. So you cannot compare both of them. So then how will I compare both of them? How can I find out any correlation? So if we can make both of them to same scale, and then I can find out, suppose that I can compare or not. So that is also one of the area, one of the characteristics feature of your features. So missing data, we look at categorical data, we look at, then we look at in the assumption what we make it, that okay, variables fulfill the assumption of linear model, which are independent from each other. And then distribution, how the data is distributed. Then outliers, if the data outliers involved, how would you do and how you find out outliers. And then feature magnitude, if there are different scales, and try to make into the same scale for the comparison and finding the correlation between them. So if you see in my previous slide, I talked about missing data. Now let's talk about how I will be covering most of this in my slides about missing data. Maybe in demo I'll try to show you other part of it if time permits to me. Missing data. So if you if you read about it, how the missing data is handled. First, you look at why the data is missing. When you ask, we can find out three patterns. One is that missing completely at random, missing at random, missing not at random. So if you do not find out why this data is missing, the probability of missing data on any attribute, like, does not depend on any value of the attribute. Like if the attribute means, again, it's a column or it's a feature. In that case, if you're not finding any, if one column is missing and the other column data is missing, so it is not completely at random. If you find a column is missing and you don't know, there is no way to know that why this data is missing, that is actually missing completely at random. Now, when it comes to missing at random, the probability and observation being missing depend only on available information. So if some other column, if you look into in a particular pattern, only this particular column is missing. If you find out that, then that is missing at random. Missing not at random, if there being a miss depend on information not recorded in the data set. In other words, there is a mechanism or reason why missing are introduced in the data set. So missing at random, before coming to missing not at random, you need to understand the missing at random. The probability and observation being missing depend only on available information. Suppose if X column is missing, you see Y column is also missing. So that is actually missing at random, right? You can find out the probability observation. Okay, in any case, if this is missing, this is also missing. So these three is really important to understand when you are handling missing data, when you are doing missing data imputation. How you're handling it depends on this way. So how you handle this once you know that why the data is missing. The next topic on this is, as I said, text data, numeric data, and we convert all our numeric data to text data. Text data to numeric data. It not necessary that we need to directly do that. In deep learning, we don't manually do that. The way we do feature engineering, which I'm going to show you in deep learning, it is hidden layer. During the hidden layer, it does that part. We don't need to do implicitly. But in normal traditional MLs, if you look at internally, though it does deep, but does the same thing to the data to find out the patterns or relationships. So we look at overall all numeric data, how it is. So normally, generally, I'm not talking about pixels values, but either it is a count in your data set or it is a price value, either percentage or measurement or age or weight, like that, these things will come up, right? So when this kind of data, if you look at numeric data, I already discussed with you that the important feature characteristics and how deal with it, if you know what kind of data it is. So when it is a numeric data, scaling is one of the things, right? The moment in numeric data you get a number, like it is a salary or age, you need to find, okay, what scale it is. Though it is not explicitly mentioned, sometimes age, there is no scale, there is no unit for it, right? So we need to understand what kind of scale it is inside, how it is used, and the distribution, how my data pattern is distributed across my whole data set or across my whole population. So these two things are important when you're dealing with numeric data. And various way we deal with some techniques. These are the techniques what we use, or sorry, these are the techniques or tools, you can say. These are the tools we use to do the feature engineering. So binarization is one concept. The core of quantitative feature binarization is to set the threshold. So binary, 0 and 1. So we give two numbers. Once you set the threshold, then I can decide my data. How it is, how it helps. Think about in such a way that suppose I have I want to design a model, and that model required that whether a student has passed or failed. For that particular thing, it need not looking into that how much of score you get in every subject. Suppose the model is designed for that, right? So in that, giving them every value for every subject, if I know that total score if crosses this number, then it is a pass or it is a fail. So when I feed to my system, I will do my featuring and do the calculation and find out, okay, this the total, if greater than this one, it is less than this, then it is 0. I set a threshold, I assign the values for every data based on my business logic, and I divide the whole data into two numbers, 1 and 0. So that's called your binarization technique, where you try to give number with 1 or 0. The other technique we called quantization or binning. Binning are two types: fixed binning, quantile binning. Binning is like creating different buckets. So I have, suppose I create, so I have a age data set of employees, and I want to put every employee into different bins. Why I do it? Sometimes it solves my problem of overfitting. So what we do is, in the binning, suppose I created 5 bins from 1 to 20, 21 to 40, like that till 100. So 5 bins I have. So wherever the age falls under, I put that particular record into that bin, assigned to that bin, bin 1, 2, 3, 4. So I might have a column in my data set. I create bin 1 if the person falls under category of your 1 to 20 years age. So that's a fixed weight binning. In quantile binning, it based on the percentage. We try to, because you don't know sometimes how many. In case of age, I can tell, but in case of some other where I do not know the total boundary, I should do the quantile binning. First 20%, 10%, 5%, or every 20% 1-1 billing, or every 30% 1-1 bin. I can do that. So that's how I created. So this is a binning technique, and we usually use to address your skewing problem. So when the data is at one particular bucket, if it is high, suppose only age criteria of one particular age range is high, so it will only show at one particular point it is so high. So that can be solved through the binning technique. Now this is very important. Some people mix both of them to understand between normalization and standardization. As I said, the numeric data has two characteristics. One is scale, one is distribution. So the first one is dealing with scale, and the second one dealing with your distribution. So normalization is a technique where we try to put our data between a particular range, like 0 to 1 or -1 to 1, or a particular number where I can address all the things. Why I do this? The most important thing why I do is there are lots of things. One of the thing I can say easily that I can see the whole data set in a particular frame. So you would have learned about sigmoid functions. I can represent any number between 0 to 1. So that will give me any data, like whether it is age data, salary data, everything. The scale is only 1. Between 0 to 1, I'm representing that. And so that gives me like I have everything within the same scale, so I can compare two numbers. Okay, how are they? Because it is based on the it is coming under the same scale. Like I apply the sigmoid function to both of them. But be aware that it's sensitive to your what you said, that your outliers data. Some outlier number also falls under that, and you think, okay, these are same, but not exactly, right? So we need to deal in a different when you are dealing with this scaling. Standardization. As I said, there are various, so many ways. There are various reasons why you do the standardization. Like we wanted to divide the number with mean, so that having a 0 mean and having a 1 standard deviation, right? So I just make the data distributed, within the normal distribution. It should look like normal distribution. So the whole data set. So how to do that? I just deduct it from the my mean, and try to project all my data under one standard deviation. And yes, and this is sensitive to outlier. I'm sorry, I said about normalization. Normalization doesn't make sense much, but standardization, you changes your whole distribution. Now think of so one of the method is G-score. We apply that, and we get our data. So the moment we apply the G-score, you get a distribution, right? And then when you apply the distribution, again, some data looks like outliers for you, but it is not, because now you change your distribution. The distribution completely change when you apply that. So you need to make sure that when you apply that, you take care of this. These are not really out. It looks like outliers when you apply it, but they are not, may not be the outliers, because you change the real distribution of the data from the raw data. Now comes to, we talked about too much about numerical data. These and the tools how to handle it. If it is a missing, then we need to first check it that what kind of missing it is, missing at random or missing not at random, or missing completely at random, how the distribution is, we need to look at. So whether, and then we look into different way the, what to say, the scaling is handled, or your standardization is, the way we are handling distribution to standardization techniques to their score. That those are all your numeric way or numeric data, how you look into that. Now comes to categorical data. We talked about categorical data, two types, ordinal and nominal. So what exactly? It's a name, right? A country belongs to, I belongs to India, or I belongs to a particular Germany, or those are all different my labels. So how that labels helps me? Is it really needed to fit to my application? Yes, if your model require that, you have to do that. Sometimes the output columns are also in form of levels, right? First class, second class, third class. So, or maybe any number, a green, red, how your outputs are red, green, blue, or in orange. So any color comes. So those are my categorical data. So categorical data can be anywhere in my features, like either it is my dependent variable or my independent variable. Dependent is the output column, independents are those who are as an input data, right? So we use two techniques. One is level encoding. Each category level as a ordered integer number. When I say ordered integer number, so it applies internally a different logic to apply those numbers. I'm not going to talk about it, how it assigns, because it's a bit complex to explain without an example or with mathematical expressions with this real data. And there is the one-hot encoding or the dummy encoding. So this is very much easy to explain. Like one-hot encoding is your any data when you give a number, and this number, when the moment I give a number, the number also may define my order, and I don't need to define that order in that way. So I need it to be not biased, or I'm not giving some extra way of saying this feature is important. So in that case, every feature become a column for me, and then I will gonna assign one whichever is applicable. Suppose in your whole data set, I have 4 countries assigned. So suppose India, Germany, USA, and Canada. So the country which I belong, then I will create 4 columns like India, Germany, Canada, and XYZ, whatever. So if I belongs to India, I will just give 1 to my under column India and others to be 0. So that's what called as one-hot encoding. The only problem here is we deal with this in various ways, and there are different techniques behind. If you go to that, like if I define 3 columns, also it does my job, right? Suppose I have 4, but I can give 3, because if all of 3 are 0, then definitely the other one is. So we handle that way. The reason is, the more, suppose your categorical data too much and I'm trying to do one-hot encoding, so there are lots of data columns will come to that, and that may overload my processing time. So that is also we need to take care when you are doing this one-hot encoding. Or the dummy encoding, we say that in some other ways. So let's now go to the demo part. I will talk. We'll go take a data set, and then we'll see that how we can apply various things looking into the data set. Okay, I have my running that. All right. So is my text is visible, clear? I do not have a zoom to zoom it.
Yes,
like zoom
it's quite visible. Maybe you may want to, if it's possible, maybe zoom in a bit, or otherwise it's okay. I think it's okay, Sandeep. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Amit. So now we will look into, we discuss about 2 different categories of types of features or variables. Those are, one is numerical features and categorical features. So let's see, we'll collect the data and we'll look into that, right? So I'm just importing, I I'm just using Jupyter Notebook. I just install, you can install through, it's a free software, like install Anaconda or any of the tool, you can use it. So I just imported pandas package, NumPy package, and for pandas for handling the data set, NumPy is to handle with my numerical processing of metrics, and matplotlib is for drawing to draw the different charts and graphs, and Seaborn is just to give a it's another on top of use for chart or to design draw plots, and just this is just I put to filter the warnings, just not to show here. So I just imported these columns, and I'm gonna use one of the common data set is Titanic. There are various reasons. This is one of the very earliest or one of the initial data set which is readily available. You can download from Kaggle or from the Google. If you search, it is readily available everywhere. You can find that, and you can play around with it. And everybody has a little bit of knowledge on this particular Titanic. Particular Titanic, either you talk about this event or incident. So let's look into that. The idea is this: we are going to design a model to predict that how many people will survive. We know that the overall data set is present. We know who survived, who did not survive, but this is to understand the whole aspect, that if I can predict well about the existing data, I know this is for the learning purpose, right? Not going to use for any business purpose. So if you look at, the first thing is you get the data and need to understand each column. So to load the data, I use pd.readcsv and titanic.csv, and this titanic.csv in my current folder where I'm running the feature, this particular Jupyter Notebook, so I don't need to give any path. So I load the data. So if you look at, the first thing we do is we need to understand that what are the different columns is. But now, before I go there and talk about, we need to understand this data set are very formal, right? That is no cleaning needed. The data is already there with me, and looks like a CSV file, but in the real world, do not expect your data will come as a CSV. These are all for training purpose. We need to form this base data, which I was talking about from various sources. But here we are just concentrating on the features. So I'm just using a simple CSV file, thinking rest of the thing has been done, and somebody from the data engineering team have hand over this data set to us, right? Now, if you look at, there are various columns like survived, how many people survived, what are the classes, P class. So name, sex, age, sibling, spouse, patch, ticket, fare, cabin, embarked. So the most important thing here, what I'm saying is, we need to really understand that what are these particular columns are. Sometimes we assume it is like that, but at the end, it is not like that. Some abbreviation is used, and this data is quite simple, but it is self-explanatory, but column names are not that much standardized, right? So we do not assume and go with your model, and then you realize it, okay, what I was thinking, this data is not talking about it. And then later on, I think about, oh, this is what. Say, for example, I can give you here is the fare. So fare is it is not written anyway, dollar or pound or any unit, right? So, or what is that? Which is the percentage written or what? Nothing. So I assume that, okay, this is in a dollar, something must be, and I start working on that. But later on, you may think, oh, no, it is not dollars. So that is also more important when you are going to, when you get your data, look into that. Column names are, what are the column names, what it talks about. And that's why you need to understand each column value and what this column is. Like if you see here, it's a social economic status, like first class, second class, this P classes. It talks about social economic class status, like the P class. And then survived, and is whether you survived or somebody died, is about, this is their names and the sex, then age and sibling and spouse. So if you are traveling with, do you have any sibling or spouse? It talks about that, like a brother, sister, stepmother, brother, stepsister, spouse, anybody is going with you. And then this is Parch, the data set define family relations in this way. If you have parent, mother, and all this, then this information will be true. How many members you are going with you? Like 2 family members with you. Then this talks about that, and then the ticket number, and the fare, and the cabin, and the embarked, from which station it was embarked. So that talks about it. Now the first thing is, when you get your data set, look at what different kind of data it is, right? So If it is a numeric data, then you know that numeric are two types, like discrete and continuous. So I identified this passenger ID, sibling, spouse, parts are my numeric data, and this is my fare. Fare is my continuous data because it has fractions. Now, categorical data, in categorical data, what are two types? One is nominal and ordinal. Then I look into that. Okay, name, sex, ticket, embark, survive, these are all my nominal data. The order doesn't matter. But P class and cabins, these two information are my, what do you say, order. This has ordinal because the order matters here. Now, I understand my data. I just load 10 records just to see that how the data looks like. It is always a best practice to look into top 10 record just to see that, to get the feel of what kind of data it stores. And then let's see that how much of data we have. Like we have 891 records and 12 columns. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So 12 columns we have and 891 records. So now go and check how the data is, like what are the different data types of it. Of course, internally it represent through integer, and these are the objects. If you look into this, all text data represent the nominal categorical data shown as objects here, names and sex, and other numeric data are in numeric or float if it is a fractional number. So once I get that, let's see the overall the data distribution through dataset name.describe. It talks about your what you say, your percentiles. So 50 percentile is like 20% below 50%, how many people there percentile, and above 25 above 25%, how much is there, with 75 percentile, how many people are there. So it talks about your percentile quantiles, right? In each quantile, how many people are there, or all their information. If you look at, it talks about your if you look at mean, right? So this passenger ID mean doesn't make much sense, but let's go here and I check it. If I see there are 75% of people age is mean is 38, right? So 38% of this one information is my most of them are young. It means like less than 40. So with that, if I go look into the max age, the maximum age person is 80 years old, right? And so you just go and look into the data pattern that, okay, what is the youngest guy or minimum age? Okay, the minimum age just like in a baby, right? So we look into this data and get a sense of how the data is, and now you can find out also is there any outliers exist. So outliers we define, there are different ways, like if the data is like above what you say 1.5 times of your both sides of this percentile, then of the range, then we can say outliers, or that is the standard way, but business has its own outlier settings, right? Suppose I wanted to cover most of the data, then I may go with which of the data above three normal distribution, which covers more than 95% almost, then those are outliers. If I'm looking only for above one distribution, one standard distribution, whatever outside range is my outliers, then I can say that way also. So it depends on the business criteria or condition, which one you want to treat as outlier. So you can check the standard deviation and you can check how many times. And so every mean, look into the mean and standard deviation. Using this too, you can find out that, okay, so from the mean, how far this standard deviation is, and that gives you a detailed information about to find out outliers. So study that, look into that, how the data looks like. Some column doesn't make sense, but this describe always takes all the columns which are in numeric data. It never takes your text data. If you look at, there are other columns like what is that? Sex is not present here because there's a text data, a categorical data, right? So it only takes the numeric data. Then identify the patterns. We say that we looked into the distribution this way, but let's look into the pattern, how it looks like through graphs. And just I use Titanic is graph. If you look at all the columns, numeric columns, so it pretty much looks like a normal distribution, not slightly right skewed, but it's okay. Fare, if you look at, most of the people taken the low fare, very few people take higher classes tickets, so most of them in this bracket of the low fare. Parts is like three types, like 1, 2, or 3. It covers, and then comes to survived columns. Look at either 0 or 1, right? Is person is survived or not. If you look at this passenger ID, it doesn't give much any information, right? Because it's just a number ID. It doesn't give any information to me. So why should I keep it? If we will drop this column because it doesn't give any information. P class, there are 3 different classes, like 1, 2, and 3. It shows me this. But if you see, almost very few people are into the top class they booked, and most of them are in this third class, or you can see in the lower grade classes people have booked the ticket. Look into sibling spouse. Most of them are going alone. Very few are with 2 and 1. Very few for 2 or 3, and maximum it looks like somebody is going with a family of 8, but it's a very negligible number, close to 0. It's just 1. Looks like 1 instance might be. So that's how the data is. So now, after looking into that distribution, you get a fair idea that which data, why we do this, you look into that, make sure that the data is normally distributed. If it is not, if left skewed, right skewed, then we need to normalize it. We'll do that. How we do that, we'll see that. So now, as I said, we are going to address the missing data. Let's find out how many missing data in my data set. So I just put is null and sum it, wherever the null just counted. So I found 177 records is null, and 687 are null for Kevin. It means it is missing. And then embark are two records are missing. So if I want to see in the percentage wise, it is like almost 20% of the data has no age. Close to more than 77% data has no Kevin information, and only 0.2, like 2% of data doesn't have this embarked, or 0.2% of data, right? So this is what I see, that okay, these are the missing values. So now I have how many columns for missing? Age, Kevin, and embarked, 3 different data, right? This column. So how will you handle that? So let's look at that. Missing data, not at random, what we discussed. Systematic missing values, right? So what I see is that if you look into the data set, wherever which did not survive, what happens that in this data set, both missing values of the variable Kevin and age was introduced systematically. How? If you look into the data, for many of the people who did not survive, they could not give their age information or Kevin. They cannot give, right? So age or Kevin information is not there, and that's why they were staying in, could not establish like what is the age and which Kevin, because we cannot collect the data. We cannot ask them. We could not, or who those people, we could not ask those questions. So if you see, I get this information, the same thing through this. I got all the is nulls and try to find out the mean. This is the same 77% what I got here, right? For the Kevin null. Now let's see and check that out of those Kevin null, what is the percentage of people have the age? Why I said it like missing at random, because if I try to find out how many people, I'm sorry, I could not run this. It's running, yes. So now if you see it, 87% out of the people where the Kevin is null they do not have the age information. It means there is a relationship. Only 60% time when the Kevin information is not there, age is not there, but 87 very much close, like, and almost any case if you see Kevin is missing, then the age is also missing. So I can find a pattern on that. So that's how this Kevin information is, I find out the relationship, right? Then missing data completely at random. We see there is embarked, right? 2 records. Embarked has missing of 2 records. So I did not find any pattern. So completely at random. I can't able to establish a relationship with any attribute with this, that why these 2 values were embarked. So NaN, they might not have entered. So earlier the data entry pattern might not be right. So how the data is entered through manually, right? So we never have this information. So dealing with this missing information, you need to think about the source. If you understand the business, collecting the data can done through filling a form manually, in a paper form, electronically, or somebody is asking, somebody you are detecting and somebody is entering the data. So that's how it's entered. So in all the areas, there is a chance of entering wrong data or intentionally not putting the data or not entering the data. All we do, this looks so far so good. I would like you guys to just, if you're new to this, go and explore what is missing data at random. Then we discuss about two. Try to find out from your side. Try to do that. We do this, and there are various other techniques to find out how many null, how many missings, and all those. So sometimes it is difficult to do that. So what I do is I use this profile report, which is one of the pandas profile. It's quite easy. It's a package, and so it automatically generates the whole report for you. If you look at like panda profile picture. So if I see that the variables, it talks me about which variable has what distribution I have and survived, how many records are survived, how many not records survived. I toggle the details, then it gives me all the details, like what is the standard deviation, what is the coefficient of variance, what is the quantile, all the detail it gives. So you don't need to write down the codes for it, and this just you install pandas profile and just put the pass the data set to that. So it gives you all the details about that. Before I proceed, I would like to check my time. Amit, how much of time I have?
Well, you are over the time.
Okay.
So basically, this is the Q&A time now. So in fact, you have about 10 minutes, but then you have a few questions also now.
Okay. So I will take another 3 minutes to complete that. Not much.
Sure.
I have. So thanks. So ideally, meeting data, when you suppose for age column, you see lots of missing age was there, almost 20%. So ideally, we say that, okay, why can't you put the mean information, right? I just calculate the mean and fill those missing data. So I fill it. So if I fill it, it looks like this distribution is looked like, right? This is the mean value wherever the age is missing. So here I would like to say, this is where the point where you want how to address it. Like there is no silver bullet to address missing values. When you understand that this data is missing, there are different techniques. And this is where I talk about that, how you understand the business and what is the art of engineering. I see that, okay, applying this doesn't make sense to me because this age average is coming around 38, suppose, and I see there is a master, a person is a master, and that record age was missing, so I apply 38. Doesn't make any sense. What I can do is I extract some information from the name column. I see there is a title, and I created this title one, and then with that title, I find out that, okay, these are the people, Mr. are this many, Mrs. are this many, and masters are this many. So I find out this count, right? And then if you look at various data has outliers, I'm not going to that, keeping in mind my time. Then I find out for every group, I find out what is the median. So if it is master, then I found the median value is 3.5. If it is a miss, then it is 21. So for different category, I find different age. So now, don't you think that if I am applying my missing value to this data set, if I see what is the title and based on that I apply that median to that is the right way, then applying mean to the overall data set. So this is where you think about that. This will give you better result. So I just apply the median to that, and then apply that whole data set wherever it is missing, the median value, wherever my field NA, wherever it is missing, I just median, and I see my distribution. So this is how I got my distribution, and I see it looks better to me because this is more standardized than the previous one. It is going to above 250. If you look at it, it's just coming down to 200 with distribution, and I see 2 records are missing, so I may delete those records. These 2 records, embarked record doesn't make much sense to me. I can delete that wherever I feel it, but make sure when you delete a record, you are losing some information. So make sure you are doing correctly. Or the other way is that if you see most of the people, wherever this embarked details, 644, 166, and 77. So wherever this information is higher, if it is null, I just go with this 644, and then I can apply this S to that if I have that value. So with that, interaction feature is one. I talked in example of if you have multiple columns of marks, then instead of, if you don't need that, you don't use them and just create another column of pass or fail. Similar to that, if I know that siblings, spouse is there, and I know the parts information is there, then there is a family and including you. So total family size you can find out. So that is the interaction feature. So using this way, creating features also, you can find out how it is impacting your model, because if you're going with your family, the chances of survival is a bit more because you can help each other. So that's where you need to think about, just not like you apply the tools, but you need to understand how these different features are helping you or not by deriving different features, and then applying everything different features when you create. Decide your data model. Just this is a model I apply, check the accuracy and whether it is increasing or not, accuracy is better or not, and make sure if it is increasing, include that. If it's not including, remove it and go to the next stage of thinking of that way. So that's how you decide whether a feature is helpful for you or not. I think I'm done. I'm ready to take your questions, all of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandeep. Thank you very much. And yes, there are questions. Have you gone through the questions in Q&A panel?
I'm just going through now that, okay. The first question is, I understand the difference between numerical category. Would you mind?
Shall I call out the question for you?
Can you hear me? I can see that. There are,
Okay.
I
You
see
can read
four
out the
questions.
questions and the answer.
Yes.
No problem.
Okay, I found one question from Kokada60. The question is, I understand the difference between numerical and categorical. Would you mind elaborating on how discrete and continuous data might be handled in a differently? Okay, so now when you say that this discrete and continuous, you remember that when you pattern, what exactly the problem you are addressing? Do I really need if you draw the graph, right? So I said I create bins. When I'm creating the binning in the categorical data, I did it, right? So your question is numbers. So it mostly happened that what kind of problem it is. If it is a regression, definitely you need to deal in a different way. If it is a non-linear program, so you need to different with in a different way. What exactly the problem you are addressing, it matters. As I said, there is no silver bullet for it, but you need to really understand that what kind of data it is and what problem you are addressing. Can you explain, can you put your question in that? Then probably I can answer better to this. Second question is, I do not think that standardization of the data changes the data from non-normal to normal distribution. Please check. Okay. So when you say, if you look into that, when I say the distribution changes, because I do not think the standardization of the data changes the data from normal. No. It is not. See, try to understand. I have a multiple Gaussian event, right? So what I'm trying to say is that always we try to make our data, what you say, looking into how can I map it. If I do not compare my with my mean, I do not know how the data is getting distributed across it. So when I apply the standardization, actually I'm impacting my distribution, because I deducting my value from the mean, right? So I am changing the distribution so that the data would be compressed. Does it answer to your question? You can ask on top of it. Has there been a situation that one-hot encoding is preferred over dummy encoding? Yes, there are in various scenarios we do this. I have seen initially I was working on one of the deep learning model where my output was a categorical variable, but I convert everything to one-hot encoding to create a one particular matrix for my layer in the last output layer. So in that case, or otherwise in normal case also, you can very well use it wherever you see it is biased because of the number what you have given. Dummy encoding sometimes don't help you. One-hot encoding help you. It depends on how the model, which model you are using and how it is behaving for that. I was a bit confused about algorithm behind determining family size. Okay. So again, if you look at it, is just not an algorithm. What I try to do is that if you look into the overall my data set, I have a P class which talks about whether parts, how many family member you have, and if you look in the description of the part is written here is the input data what I have is hold on. The data define family relations in this way: parent, mother, how many people, and father, child, daughter, or son, stepdaughter, stepson. Some children traveled only with a nanny. So in that case, there. So what I've given. Some children travel only with a nanny. Therefore, the part is 0 because he's not traveling with any family member. So the idea is what is that I'm going? The idea is to find out the interaction feature. How I'm deriving is more important, right? So look into the mindset of looking into how you derive it. Uh, as I said, the family size. Let me go to the formula. The sibling and spouse. If you have two sibling and spouse, and you are going with your grandparents or father, how many they are? This doesn't cover them, right? And you himself. So considering all of them, your whole family size is. The sibling and spouse talks about your spouse or your sister, brother, and the parts is talking about your family, like your parent or grandparent or your father or mother with whom you are going, how many people. So these two information plus one is yourself. That's become the whole family size. How are we converting the data from left skewed or right skewed to normalize? Are we using any packages? There are functions. You can use log transformation. If it is your right skewed, you can use uh, inverse log if it is a left skewed. Also, sometimes people use what you say median. Also, sometimes use to solve this skewed problem. So there are various ways you can do that, and it is available in normal your Python packages. So nothing specific packages. You apply your these functions as I said about NumPy and NP. You can find those like your log mathematical log functions, math packages, or your as I said inverse log. How are you converting?
All right, Sandeep, looks like you have cleared all questions.
Yeah, I feel the first question I should answer, but I would like to please reach out to me on the standard distribution. I know that because of the time, maybe I need an example for you that how it impacts your standard distribution when the G-score we apply, and I can have a separate talk if you just Slack me or you maybe reach out to me through our LinkedIn page or my Twitter. I would love to have a discussion on that.
Yes, precisely, Sandeep. And friends, it's important that you continue interacting with the speaker even after the event is over, after Sandeep's session is over. So we have forums on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Telegram. And I'll just pull out the links and put them there in the chat window. So stick around to get the links and you can ask questions there as well. With this, thank you very much, Sandeep, for a wonderful session and a lovely demo. It was quite deep dive, and I'm sure the audience really loved it. With this, friends, please give feedback. The links are again there in the chat window. So the link for session feedback, please do that. And the link for the overall feedback on LinkedIn. A lot of comments coming there. So please make sure you put in the comments. Remember, all this is free for the community. So the speakers, the organizers, ourselves, our team members, we don't get really paid for anything like this. It's all for you. So give us feedback and it will really motivate all of us. So the links are up there.